Good evening, this is Ebro Africa Prime Time News, and the war between the Cabinet Secretary for Education and the Kenya National Parents Association has landed in courts. The Kenya National Parents Association Secretary General Musau Dunda says that the CS Matiang'i has no mandate to regulate the association, let alone disband it. And it is on this note that we are asking you, is the Kenya National Parents Association an effective parents representative on matters of education? But before we get to that, let's first have a look at the stories making the headlines in tonight's bulletin. Musau Ndunda takes Fred Matiang'i to court over legality of Parents Association. Probe on Justice Tunoi could be a lengthy process than just a week's inquiry by a special committee. President Uhuru Kenyatta calls for immediate withdrawal of the proposed religious society rules. And NHIF widens cover for its members with immediate effect in both public and private hospitals. Indeed, a very warm welcome. Now, the Kenya National Parents Association has moved to court to challenge Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i's recent letter that nullified the association as parents' representative. Dunda has termed the letter defamatory and malicious, saying Matiang'i has no basis of questioning an independent organization that does not fall under his ministry.
After 3 days of declining to comment on a letter that has been widely reported on, in which Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i termed the Kenya National Parents Association illegal, the association, led by its vocal Secretary General Musau Dunda, has finally responded. Musau Dunda has filed a case against Education Cabinet Secretary Fred Matiang'i and Education Principal Secretary Belio Kipsang for what he terms as a defamation of the association and contempt of the High Court ruling of September 2014 that ruled that the association is valid.
Matiang'i has no powers whatsoever under the law, either under the Societies Act Cap 108 or under the Basic Education Act, for us to question. Even the first thing, he has no locus to poke his noses into an organization that is not a department of the Ministry of Education. By trying to give an opinion about our constitution amounts to contempt of court. How do you write a letter to me and you tell me the way I think about your constitution? Who are you to ask me about my constitution?
The letter in question nullified the association as a parent representative, saying, and I quote, "A thorough review of your constitution reveals that your association is not the umbrella body of parents anticipated in the Act. Going by your constitution and by the laws, your association has no legal basis under the Basic Education Act." And on that, Musau Dunda says Matiang'i has no mandate to invalidate an independent organization and even going against a High Court ruling of September 2014. He says KNPA is a duly registered organization whose certificate remains valid. The letter further directed all institutions and schools under the ministry to immediately stop remitting money to the Parents Association. Money Musau Dunda declined to put a figure on, but went further to threaten those reporting on the figure as 65 million shillings, saying he will take them to court.
They must tell us, how did you arrive at 65 million? Because to the best of my knowledge, I don't know what kind of money is that. I don't go to school to ask money. No, there is a clear structure, which you, and when you are reporting, get facts. Don't make a mistake of just saying, with the 2,000 these are total. Because now we have said, enough is enough. You file a case, you report something, whether on whatever media, we will go to you.
This even as NAT Secretary General Wilson Sossion has lauded Matiang'i's move to nullify the association, terming it as an extortion scheme. But Musau maintains that the move by Matiang'i is malicious and vows to battle it in court.
And indeed, this forms the basis of our viewpoint question, where we are asking you, is the Kenya National Parents Association an effective parents representative on matters of education? Is the Kenya National Parents Association an effective parents representative on matters education? Remember, you can send in your comments or suggestion on our SMS line, that is 21292, or you can engage with us through our social media platforms, and that is Ebru Africa News or at G_Okachi, and we shall be able to sample some of your views at the middle of this bulletin. Now, to other matters. The government has finally bowed to pressure and withdrawn the much-contested Religious Societies Rules 2015. This followed a meeting this evening between President Uhuru Kenyatta and religious leaders at State House in Nairobi. The president, while ordering for the setting aside of the controversial rules, said that the move would pave way for a process driven by the religious stakeholders with the participation of the government and the general public in structured consultation. President Uhuru Kenyatta said that with such a window, the outcome will be development of firm and fair regulations that uphold the sacrosanct principles of religious freedoms and that underpin the country's democratic ideals as guaranteed by the Constitution. The president also took the opportunity to reaffirm his government's commitment to doing everything necessary to facilitate a free and open society conducive to a vibrant religious environment. He also maintained that his administration is committed to an open, transparent and accessible government where public participation and consideration of a broad range of views is paramount. The draft regulations proposed, among other things, registration of churches, set a threshold of theological qualifications for the religious leaders, and issuance of annual returns and audited accounts by the churches. However, the religious leaders opposed the regulations and vowed to kick out the current administration, and this seemingly has forced the government to backtrack on the regulations. Now, moving on to other stories, on Deputy President William Ruto has waded into the differences pitting governors and their deputies across the country. While noting that the differences were affecting service delivery at the counties, the DP maintained that there was need to seek for ways forward. And addressing the Council of Deputy Governors at a hotel in Naivasha, the DP admitted that the Constitution had not clearly defined the role and duties of the Deputy Governors. Ruto challenged the Senate to address the two bills, before which seeks to set the roles and duties of the Deputy Governors. Ruto told the deputies that there was no need for competition or confrontation, saying that consultation was the only way forward. He told the deputy governors that if their governors failed, they too will have failed, adding that the national government was fully behind devolution.
The best way to get to the next level is to do the job you have well. You cannot succeed your boss by bringing him down. You support your boss, you will succeed your boss if you do your job well and support him. Because if you undermine your boss, for sure, the person who will be behind you will undermine you, and therefore you will not succeed. It's not possible for the governor to fail and for the deputy governor to succeed. It's a big lie. It's not possible. It's either you swim together or you sink together. And much more importantly, as a philosophy that I believe in, if you aren't ready to be led, then you are not the material to lead.
And now moving on, the National Hospital Insurance Fund contributors will now have double benefits for inpatient services in both public and private hospitals after the National Hospital Insurance Fund unveiled a new cover. NHIF will now pay 1,200 shillings for inpatient services offered in public hospitals from the current 600 shillings and 4,000 shillings in the private hospitals, up from 2,100 shillings. The fund has also introduced new benefits packages for the management of chronic illnesses and selected specialized laboratory and radiology services.
The National Hospital Insurance Fund has introduced a new benefit package that will cover the management of chronic illnesses. As a result of increased exposure to chronic conditions, the fund has resolved to pay 25,000 shillings per session for contributors battling with cancer, 18,000 shillings per session for those undergoing radiology, and 5,000 shillings per month for monthly clinic reviews. The fund has also introduced specialized radiological diagnostic services where members can access MRI at 15,000 shillings per session and a CT scan at 8,000 shillings per session.
We are sending these board approvals this afternoon. It's already gone to the Cabinet Secretary for signature and subsequently to the Attorney General for gazettement. And that process should be able to be concluded, if not by the close of the day tomorrow, latest by Monday.
While unveiling these new packages, NHIF Chairman Muhammad Ali announced an enhanced inpatient cover that will now see the fund pay up a minimum of 1,200 Kenya shillings in public hospitals and a maximum of 4,000 shillings. Contributors will also benefit from the increased inpatient cover in private hospitals at a minimum of 2,000 shillings and a maximum of 4,000 shillings.
The lowest rate we used to pay out under the inpatient cover used to be 600 Kenya shillings per night, and this has been doubled to 1,200. So from today henceforth, the minimum rate that NHIF will pay in any hospital will be 1,200. And this goes on to a maximum of 4,000 per night for the high-end hospitals, and that includes Kenyatta National Hospital.
Other benefits include kidney dialysis to a maximum of 10,000 shillings per session, an increase from the initial 2,500 shillings per session. Further, a cover for kidney transplants has been more than doubled from 200,000 Kenya shillings to 500,000 Kenya shillings. Mothers as well have a reason to smile. NHIF will now cover normal deliveries at 8,000 shillings and cesarean section delivery up to 30,000 shillings, up from 6,000 shillings and 18,000 shillings respectively.
And enhanced renal dialysis and kidney transplant, our members can now access kidney dialysis in all NHIF accredited facilities to a maximum of Kenya shillings 10,000 per session. This is an increase of over 300% from the current rate of Kenya shillings 2,000 per session.
NHIF chairman has, however, maintained that the various services can only be accessed at accredited hospitals, encouraging more Kenyans to enroll as members of the fund. The new changes take effect immediately.
Yeah, to be Melissa, I think they're happy. Yeah. How you will put it, please? We know we are partners with you. Let Kenyans know these things and let us encourage Kenyans to benefit from these services.
Well, even as we encourage Kenyans, and back to the story that we earlier read, and after the JSC formed a special committee to investigate corruption claims against Supreme Court Judge Justice Philip Tonoi, questions abound on the outcome of the findings. We spoke to a legal expert, and as it turns out, the matter could be lengthier than just a special committee's report. And take a look why.
The judgment of the High Court dated 10th September.
The fate of Philip Tonoi is now in the hands of a special committee that was formed on Wednesday by CJ Willie Mutunga on prop graft claims against him. According to lawyer Ambrose Weda, the special committee is expected to begin the investigation anytime tomorrow. Lawyer Weda says that if Tonoi, Kiplagat and Nairobi Governor Evans Kidero will be found guilty of corruption, various consequences will befall them.
Then advised the president to form a tribunal to investigate Justice Philip Tonoi, and it is that tribunal that can remove him from office. Therefore, whatever the outcome of what the Chief Justice has done, it does not affect Kidero. Honorable Kidero can only be affected by action directed against him by the EACC. Kiplagat is the center of the storm. So if it turns out that he was blowing hot and cold on lies, definitely Justice Tunoi and Kedero will sue him and they will sweat it.
He went on to say that if Tunoi will be found culpable, his subsequent interdiction shall not interfere with the sitting schedule of the Supreme Court.
Day-to-day business, 5 are enough. Special, 7. So if Tunoi is out, there will be 6. But we look at it in terms of that it will not paralyze the Supreme Court.
Ambrose further justified that the corruption saga has wrecked an already injured reputation of the judiciary.
It itself comes out, the head of judiciary says, there is corruption within my organization. What are you left with than now to feel like you have nowhere to turn to? So they need internal, what we call implosion. They need a reflection to recapture the lost ground.
Nonetheless, Weda says it was not a smart move for CJ Willie Mutunga to pile corruption pressure on Philip Tunoi in the public. He opines that it would have been less injurious to the judiciary if the matter was handled internally.
They have, with the revelations from the Chief Justice and earlier revelations, the hitting from the politicians, I'm telling you, they have received a thorough beating. We have rolled back the clock several years.
Weda says that the entire fabric of the judiciary is engulfed by corruption and calls on relevant authorities to put strategies to curb the vice that is threatening to shred the reputation of the legal arm of the government.
I would urge him to go slow on rhetoric, populist rhetoric that is spewed out into the public, either to gain confidence or whatever, I don't know what his motives are, and to get into the actual so that when he acts, people see somebody out.
The JCS Special Committee is expected to inquire and report back to the JSC within 7 days. It is still not clear who or how many individuals will be summoned to appear before the committee in relation to the allegations that Justice Tunoi received a 200 million shillings bribe from Governor Kidero through Geoffrey Kiplagat, now turned a whistleblower.
In other matters, 2 suspects charged with killing 60 people in the Mpeketoni attack have a case to answer, the Mombasa High Court has ruled. Justice Martin Muya, while making the ruling, has said that the prosecution's evidence against the 2 is sufficient to put them on their defense. The 2, Suleiman Mahadi alias Jesus, will now call their witnesses during the defense hearing. Mahadi intends to call 10 witnesses, whereas his co-accused Salim will call 3 witnesses during the defense hearing. The 2 were presented by their lawyers, Taib Ali Taib and Abi Olaba, respectively. The prosecution, led by the Assistant Director of Public Prosecution, Alexander Muteti, closed their case against the 2 accused on Wednesday. During the hearing of the case, the prosecution called 32 witnesses, some of whom were under Witness Protection Agency, forcing them, the sessions to be conducted in camera. Now moving on, Kenya and Nigeria have agreed to combine efforts in the fight against terrorism. The 2 countries will cooperate at multilateral and bilateral fronts to eliminate terrorism, given that they share the same destruction terror has caused in the hands of Nigerian-based Boko Haram and, of course, the Somalis' Al-Shabaab.
Kenya has suffered terrorism in the hands of terrorist group Al-Shabaab, while Nigeria has had its own share from Boko Haram. President Kenyatta has emphasized that peace and security are essential ingredients to sustainable development, saying that is why Kenya has continued to be at the forefront in championing for the realization of peace and security in Africa. He thanked Nigeria for its support to Kenya following the recent attack on AMISOM soldiers from Kenya. President said that Kenya is as well committed to strengthening partnership in trade with Nigeria.
Commitment to strengthening the partnership between Kenya and Nigeria, to strengthening the trade partnership between our two countries, towards sharing experiences in various sectors where we have our individual strengths, to boosting trade.
President Buhari is optimistic that Kenya will help the neighboring Somalia in efforts to subdue Al-Shabaab, as Cameroon and Chad are doing in West Africa to fight Boko Haram.
Area of security, Nigeria has been lucky in the sense that our immediate neighbors in the Lake Chad Basin Commission, that's Chad, Niger, Cameroon, are helping Nigeria to fight Boko Haram. We have been making progress. I believe Kenya has been making progress in helping its neighbor Somalia.
President Kenyatta observed that the African Union through AMISOM has made great strides in the stabilization of Somalia, noting that sustainable peace and stability for Somalia means stability and security for the region and beyond. The president has also urged Nigeria to remain steadfast in supporting the government of the Federal Republic of Somalia in its national reconciliation and reconstruction efforts.
Well, moving on, cases of collapsing of buildings have been rampant in the country. Often people lose their lives and property is destroyed. The government has been giving out affirmations that measures of ensuring that buildings are safe are being put in place. Ebru TV launched a spot check to find out the steps that the government has taken to ensure that Kenyans are safe from collapsing buildings.
In 2015, many cases of buildings collapsing occurred, especially here in Nairobi and other parts of the country. People lost their lives and property was destroyed. Due to this, the government gave out an affirmation that enough measures would be put in place to curb such incidences from recurring in the future. Today, Ebru Africa TV wanted to find out the steps that the government has taken so far to ensure that buildings are safe in Nairobi and its environs. We spoke to Moses Nyakiongora, who is the Secretary of Buildings Inspectorate at the Ministry of Public Works, and he had this to say.
We have demolished 2 in Kawa West. There are 2 about to be demolished in Matare. We have 2 which are also under suspect in Saudi B, where the team is at the moment. So by the time we demolish a building, we must be satisfied that there is no salvage. Because we also don't want, it's an economic disaster when you bring down a building, if you can save it in a way.
According to Nyakiongora, more than 2,000 buildings have been inspected in Nairobi. But despite all this, tenants of a residential building in Ruiru Kimbo had to vacate the premises earlier this week after it started showing signs of imminent collapse. This is despite the presence of officers who have been mandated to check the quality of buildings and ensure that they are safe.
At any time, you have thousands of construction works going on. The county government or the Nairobi county government may not have enough personnel to be there every time. You know, you can supervise this building, okay, everything, reinforcement is done properly. Since you are not there the whole day, as soon as you leave, they do their gymnastics. They take the shortcuts. So the culprits are actually the developers and the contractors.
We also sought to establish why only small buildings collapse often.
The buildings that collapse are actually the small buildings for developers. These 4 floors, 5 floors. You have never had a huge building collapsing because they have supervisors all the time and they have engineers all the time. These high-rise buildings, because the investors know they have done so much.
Poor designs and wrong building materials are said to be behind the collapsing of buildings. Meanwhile, the Deputy Director of the National Disaster Management Unit, Pius Masai, has asked the public to remain vigilant and report to the police any buildings that are unsafe.
If you see any building coming up or any foundation, find out, and even a query from the authorities, is this building licensed to come up? Because when it comes up, it may affect you directly or indirectly.
Last year, President Uhuru Kenyatta formed an inspectorate that is expected to ensure that buildings are safe for habitation.
Well, for some time now, motorists have found it difficult to get back to Waiyaki Way after deviating to Kangemi Market since the feeder lane is in deplorable condition. The lane has been choked with filth due to poor waste disposal, eroding the bitumen layer of the road, leaving it muddy and inaccessible.
Kangemi slums gained instant fame when Pope Francis visited St. Joseph's Catholic Church in the area last year, triggering rehabilitation of various roads to ease movement of the papal motorcade through the slums. However, the rehabilitation process was short-lived as some of the roads were abandoned before their completion. One of those roads is feeder lane meant to lead motorists from the Kangemi flyover back to Waiyaki Way. Garbage accumulation on this lane that cuts through Kangemi Market has eroded the bitumen layer, leaving the road muddy and inaccessible. Traders have also encroached on the remaining parts of the road, making it even more difficult and inaccessible. According to the motorist, only the entry to the market is motorable. The exit lane is in a deplorable condition that causes persistent traffic jams at the market.
Sasa, hii barabara inafaa itokee kwa main. Sababu pale kwa bridge hakuna, sasa hapa hakuna U-turn nyingine ukienda hivi. Sasa unaona mimi nafika hapa, nikifika hapa hakuna vile nitapita hivyo sababu ya matope na takataka. Sasa tunauliza serikali kama inaweza tutengenezea hapa, at least tuwe tunapita hivi, itakuwa vizuri sababu masaa ya jioni ile jamu inakuwa hapa sababu ya soko, magari ya soko inakuja kuleta vitu, inabidi irudi kwa bridge.
Okay, kwa kawaida unajua kwa soko inatakana kunakuwa na entrance na exit. Sasa kama mimi sasa hivi nimeshaingia soko, lakini sasa kuingia tu main highway, so ni Waiyaki Way. Inatakana at least kuwe na exit ya kujoin highway. Lakini sasa inabidi ni reverse mpaka kule juu total. So na hiyo sio mzuri.
The lane was passable in the past before it was filled with garbage at some point, forcing traders to encroach on the remaining part of it, making it totally inaccessible. But there was some hope during papal visit as efforts to reclaim this lane were witnessed. Those efforts were short-lived as contractors abandoned the project almost as soon as the Pope left St. Joseph Church, Kangemi. Despite the recently launched initiative to clean various markets in Nairobi, little can be said about Kangemi. Garbage keeps accumulating day in, day out. Thus, the road remains inaccessible.
Very well. Remember at the beginning of this bulletin, we did ask you if you think the Kenya National Parents Association is an effective parents representative on matters education. Is the Kenya National Parents Association an effective parents representative on matters education? And of course, we've had a number of you giving your reactions, and of course I'll start to sample some of them, where Sylvester Makato says, no, how do government allow such associations to exist when it knows very well they are thirst for money in the name of defending nothing? Leslie, you're saying it's a talk shop that does not, rather does very little or no work on behalf of the parents. Koech Rono says that KNPA is a circus just like any other government association. No, it should not be allowed to represent parents. And Shadi finally says, I don't believe in KNPA since most of its leaders are self-centered. Well, keep your comments coming. And of course, we shall be able to sample them as we go on with this bulletin. But for now, we're taking a very short break. Don't go too far. We're back with more news.
Kommer folk?
12 migrants, among them 8 children, drawn off the coast of Greece. And world number 1 Serena Williams on course to defend her Australian Open title.